Thanks for joining us at New Hampshire Network for Environment, Energy, and Climate. I'm Ryan Marzano, and then I will hand it off to my colleagues who will do the heavy lifting. But first, the important preliminaries. We recall that this event takes place in Ndakina, the ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude this land, the waterways, and the people who have stewarded Ndakina through the generations. And as usual, let's all remember to stay on mute the whole time. Thanks very much. Our intention is to leave time for Q&A after several of the presentations. So drop your questions in the chat as we go along. And finally, this program is being recorded, and everyone who registered will receive a link to the recording as soon as it's available. And it'll also be available on our website, newhampshirenetwork.org. The title of today's event is Local Actions, Global Impact, and the accompanying butterfly and globe image recalls a question that was posed by one of the first pioneering climate scientists, Ed Lorenz, in 1972, whether the tiny atmospheric disturbances created by a butterfly's wings in one part of the world could theoretically grow to influence large-scale disturbances like storms, tornadoes, etc. The question was sort of tongue-in-cheek, but he answered it. Lawrence answered it by concluding a resounding yes, but it depends. And this was based on two subsidiary claims that he made. One was that if a single flap of a butterfly's wing can be instrumental in generating the tornado, so also can all the previous and subsequent flaps of its wings, as can the flaps of the wings of millions of other butterflies, not to mention the activities of innumerable powerful creatures, including our own species. So vast number of factors involved, but they do add up to major change and major events, major phenomena. Secondly, he said, if the flap of a butterfly's wing can be instrumental in generating a tornado, it can equally well be instrumental in preventing a tornado. And the moral of this is direction of influence makes a big difference. So apply this butterfly metaphor to community action. It reminds us that individual actions in isolation don't do very much in general. In fact, butterflies by themselves, flapping in a vacuum, have no effect whatsoever. But individual actions in persistent coordination with other actions tending in the same direction can become an irresistible force. And the critical ingredient there is coordination. The other side of it is that besides all these myriad small disturbances adding up to large events, the reverse is also true. There are large-scale patterns that constrain what the small actions do. And it's not an either-or proposition. We have to work, coming to our own context, we have to work both at the ground level by coordinating and by collaborating, and at the top-down level by trying to influence policy-setting agendas in every way that we can. So we're going to see some examples here about some examples. The network, through its network structure, is trying to make contributions in both of those two directions, bottom up and top down, in different ways. And so we'll hear about some of the nuts and bolts, some of the learnings from the last couple of years. And we will start with Plastics Working Group. Christina Dubin will introduce the working group, some of the actions the group has taken to generate change at the individual and at the community level. Then John Gage from our Climate Working Group will describe some of the ways we can help move our society toward a more reasonable and science-based policy environment. And finally, Melissa Elander is here from one of our member organizations, Clean Energy New Hampshire, and we'll add some thoughts from the North Country on citizen petitioned warrant articles. Right, and now over to Christina Dubin.
Thank you. I apologize in advance that I'm a fleeting guest here. I have a short amount of time, so if I disappear after, that's why. And I'll just offer a very quick intro to the Plastics Working Group. We are a grassroots coalition working to address the intersectionality of climate change, human health, environmental justice, waste management, and the pollutive aspects of plastics in the larger petrochemical industry. And the way that we aim to do all of that is through building support for reduction policy, building relationships with businesses and schools, with community leaders, and through education and outreach. One of the great campaign efforts so far from this group is the 10 Towns, 10 Actions, and the 10 Towns Toolkit, which you see a little image of there in the middle of the screen. And that is designed to help individuals plug in through actions, whether it's legislation or infrastructure or education and outreach, to have a template of how to go about it and to have a community leader that they can reach out to who has experience in leading that action. So to give them all the support that they need to move forward. So I will quickly introduce myself, and then I will pass it on to each person to introduce themselves. Is that correct? And then circle back. I hope that's right. Okay. I'm Christina Dubin. I have been volunteering with the Plastic Working Group for over a year. And I'm also a volunteer with Surfrider Foundation New Hampshire chapter. Right now, I just ended my 2-year term on the executive committee and as campaigns coordinator for their Rise Above Plastics program. And I am also working full-time for Beyond Plastics, which is a national organization that has a lofty goal to end plastic pollution everywhere. So I'll pass it to Bonnie to introduce herself.
I'm Bonnie Christie. I'm from Hopkinton. I serve on the Waste Reduction Committee here and the Conservation Commission. And I've been a member of this Plastics Working Group from the start.
And Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Baber from Dover. I am the co-leader of the Dover Plastic Reduction Group, and I also have been with the Plastic Working Group since the beginning.
And last but not least is Mary. Has she joined?
Yes, I have. Thank you. So I'm Mary Armstrong from Harrisville, a small town in the southwest corner, and I'm the lead for the Harrisville team. A bit new to activism, but not new to motivating people. So, and very proud to be part of this group.
Great.
And I think that's it for this slide.
Okay.
Okay, so I am going to give a 2-minute overview here of why local policy is needed. So many of you may be familiar that Portsmouth has passed a polystyrene ban that is citywide. We did also pass a single-use policy on city property, but I'd like to just focus on the citywide piece. So it gets brought up a lot that that ban has not been challenged. And, you know, in New Hampshire, we're a Dillon's Rule state, so we have to have, in order for municipalities to pass policies, we have to have enabling legislation from the state. And we believe that we do, and that it lies in our solid waste regulations. And the short of it is that we need to pass policy that aligns with the waste hierarchy. And at the top of that hierarchy is source reduction. We need policies that reduce plastic and reduce waste upstream. And we need to move away from this single use and an extractive model where we're fracking and cracking and making these single-use products out of plastic. And the reason why we want to do this at the local level is that one, through relationships and through working with businesses and schools and, the community that we live in, that's how we're going to get things passed. And also it creates a varied policy landscape that supports the need for policymakers to want to introduce state level change. So they need to see that patchwork. It can also create a headache for industry, which is a bonus there. And we've seen this in other states. So in Maine, for instance, before they passed their bag law, there were lots of cities and towns that had their own individual policies. So we start at the grassroots, we build the case that we need this change, we build relationships, we build that pressure and work our way up. Plastics in particular, there's urgency here, which you may hear from others, because the full life cycle impacts our environmental health and our public health. And, dealing with public health at the local level, I think, is very important. And we have to keep in mind that recycling is great for glass and it's great for paper and cardboard. I'm forgetting material, aluminum, but it is not going to address the problem of plastics. And any circularity of plastics is a circularity of toxins because it's a petrochemical with chemical additives. So again, we really want to address this upstream versus downstream when we're looking at disposal. We want to be turning off that tap, that great image from the documentary, The Story of Plastic. Turn off that tap instead of trying to bail out a bathtub with a spoon while the tap is still running. And I will just make one more note that the American Chemistry Council, basically the plastic lobby, is now trying to pass laws around the country, and one has already snuck through in New Hampshire to make it easier to cite chemical recycling facilities. So this is also going to be another local fight here. The law has passed, but there are people in the plastics working group looking at what we can do to prevent such a facility from being cited because it is, again, toxic. It's not good for our public health. And these facilities are cited in low income or marginalized communities. So we really, again, want to start at this local level, make these local level policy changes so that we can shift our state into the right direction on plastics.
Hi, I guess that's me now.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Bonnie Christie, and I am from Hopkinton. I've been asked to talk about how to do a proclamation. In an earlier slide, you may have noticed that we use a philosophy in the plastics working group called PI, which stands for Policy, Infrastructure, and Education. And proclamations are a part of the policy part of the PI. The proclamation that you see on the right on the screen now is the one that we did in Hopkinton this past July, and it was inspired by the Australian project called Plastic Free July, and that's their nice background that we borrowed. You can make the content of any proclamation whatever you want, but there really are 4 basic steps in the process that you'll always follow. So Ryan, can you do next slide? So the first step is I wouldn't recommend you do a proclamation unless you already have a foundation in your community for it. We started back in 2018 having community conversations at the farmers market about plastic. The kids did things about plastic. They marched in the 4th of July parade. So it wouldn't be the first time our select board had heard about plastics in our town. You don't want your select board or your city council to be a deer in the headlights. So build a foundation before you start. Next slide. Step 2 of the 4 steps is give yourself plenty of time, because you don't know how many times the select board or the council is going to want to edit it, make changes. Sometimes meetings get canceled and rescheduled, so don't leave it to the last minute. Create yourself a timeline, know when your board meets, find out how to get a draft of a proclamation on the agenda. Don't feel you have to reinvent the wheel. You'll see some links to proclamations and resolutions from other towns that other towns have done on the program tonight. So definitely use the templates and then customize it for yourself. It helps to identify a champion on your governing body, your select board, or your council, who would advocate and speak for this when you present it as a citizen. And also it's helpful to line up co-sponsors, like get your school to endorse the proclamation, get the library, get the Chamber of Commerce. Next one, Reinmar. Step 3, develop your content, customize it to your town, highlight things that you've already done to build on this proclamation, like educational programs, projects they've done in schools. Add in any new information that you want people to learn from this proclamation. And it's always good to give a challenge, like, what are you going to do with this proclamation? What do you want people to do with it? And some tips for success are to have an attractive format. You can have the very formal one with a town seal on it. We chose to use this one from Plastic Free July because it's very colorful. It made for great posters. It's kind of a fun, upbeat one. You can put in a link or a QR code so people can take action when they read the proclamation. And don't try to stay away from political hot buttons. For example, plastics are related to climate change. You need to, no pun intended, take the temperature of your community as to where they are on climate change, and if that's still a hot button, and make sure that you know your sources and you can solidly defend anything that you are asking to be put in. Next one, Reinmar. And then the important last step, which is why you don't want to leave it to the last minute, is follow through with the proclamation. It doesn't do any good to just have a proclamation on the town website that nobody's going to see. Make sure memos get out to all the town committees and the branches of government if you want them to avoid plastic water bottles. If they're having 4th of July events, you don't want them to use plastic utensils. Get the word out to the schools, your senior center, anybody else who you think might be able to act on your proclamation. So that's pretty much it. Follow the 4 steps and be sure to give us a call at 10 Towns because we have some experience with this. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, this is Christine Baber, and I am going to be sharing some information about a citywide voluntary initiative to reduce the use and distribution of single-use plastic products in Dover. We as our 2 previous members of our groups have spoken about, focus first on relationship building. So we met with our mayor, and you see the photo of our then mayor, Karen Weston, here on the screen, to talk about the issue. We made contact with some of our other city councilors before we started moving forward. It was clear that Dover did not share Portsmouth's thinking about enabling legislation, and we're only willing to move forward with a voluntary rather than a mandatory resolution. We drafted the resolution ourselves, And one of the things that we have found, either with resolutions that we have done or proclamations, is you want to do as much of the work as you can yourself before you go to ask elected officials to work with you on this. We included a statement that said that part of the non-biodegradable single-use plastic reduction initiative would include city council-led efforts to promote the use of reusable, compostable, and or recyclable materials. So wherever we could in our resolution, we added in information that hopefully will serve us well in the future as well. Once this resolution was passed, we can now say, well, remember back in April of 2019, the city agreed, whatever, in this case, that they would lead efforts to reduce single-use plastic. At that point in time, there were also 2 bills before the House that we were testifying about, that we wanted the city to support. So we also added a section that said, the city of Dover endorses the initiative to reduce the use of non-biodegradable single-use plastics in all forms, and hereby also recognizes and supports the 2 bills. And then we gave the numbers of the bills. In addition, we also added a section that said that the city of Dover further supports enabling legislation in Concord that addresses these issues and urges the city of Dover residents and visitors to reduce the distribution and use of non-biodegradable single-use plastic materials. The mayor moved the resolution forward. The city attorney, as always, reviewed it, put it into proper form, and the resolution was heard and passed unanimously by our city council. So although this was a voluntary resolution, we believe that it laid the foundation for future actions. For example, after this, in 2021 and 2022, we were able to get plastic-free July proclamations issued. We also will use this when we go back to the council for support for other resolutions and actions. And hopefully some of these will be mandatory in the future. So I would be glad to answer any questions that anyone has about putting forward resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Okay, hi, I'm Mary Armstrong, and I'm here to talk about gearing up for a community conversation. One thing I've learned from my 10 towns work is communication is key. Harrisville is a small town, a population of about 1,000, and it has some community networks, a website, a newsletter that comes out every 2 months, gathering spots like library, post office, general store, town beach, and a transfer station. And our team has used most of them, but we've realized we need to share information in many different ways. Articles, emails, displays, presentations, conversations, social media, and it just goes on. People learn differently. They absorb information at their own speed. They can be preoccupied, or they just may not understand certain terminology. So we got the idea of having a community conversation as another way to share our mission and better understand what people really care about. This was not a new thing, as the town planning board had hosted several of these in the past on issues like community power. So we asked their advice, and they were willing to help us out with some organization assistance. We also talked to the committee that oversees the town transfer station to see if they were willing to speak. And this was pivotal because they are a relatively new committee. They've done minimal outreach, and most residents did not know they even existed. So at the event, when they explained that they explained the transfer station operates through a service provider. And they also explained what happens when the service provider takes our rubbish, mixed paper, aluminum, etc. And the biggest surprises for the audience came from two things. When they learned that the town could save money if people compacted whatever they take to the transfer station, i.e., crush your cans. This would reduce the accumulated volume, so less pickups would be needed. And the other surprise was when they learned that both Massachusetts and Connecticut send a lot of their trash to New Hampshire landfills. So we also included some political and legislative perspectives for this. And we invited a speaker from a climate action group to talk about their work. And we also asked our local state rep to talk about the environmental legislative process and what residents can do to help facilitate new laws. Lastly, we invited a nearby business to discuss how composting can help the environment by reducing trash and plastic. And they shared possible composting options our community might want to consider. Overall, it was a success. The audience was engaged and asked great questions, and they hungered for more information. So it has opened the door for more conversations in the future. And I can answer any questions later too. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mary. Well, I think if there are questions in chat, or if anybody has any questions at this time for the plastics working group, I think now would be a good moment to ask them. And Susan, do you see anything in the chat, or Donna?
I think questions have been answered as we went along, but maybe people have been so busy listening they didn't want to write. Anyone have anything now? There's a lot of information. Thank you so much.
Can you explain the difference between a resolution and a proclamation, and then what behavior changes resulted from these? It seems non-binding to me, where a law seems unavoidable, and just wondering, what the result was.
Good question. Anybody? Bonnie?
I will defer to Christine because she has done both a resolution and a proclamation. We've only done a proclamation, but in terms of what the results were, our town is not ready for binding requirements about plastics yet. So this was, more of an awareness, and it's a way of getting at the highest governance level of your municipality. It's a way of getting the issue recognized as one that's important. It also had an impact on, we had a lot of 4th of July activities, and we were able to get the word out, at your hot dog stand, please try not to hand out plastic forks and spoons and that kind of stuff. So it does have an impact, and we did find that people actually they want to know about plastics and they want to do the right thing, but most people don't know anything about it and don't know what the right thing is to do. So I hope that helps.
So in that sense, it's partly a way of furthering the conversation, social discourse, let's say.
Exactly.
Christine, how would you describe the difference between the two?
Well, I think with a non-binding or voluntary resolution, obviously it is not going to have the kind of impact that, for example, Portsmouth has had in regard to polystyrene. We see both resolutions and proclamations, I think, as symbolic tools educational tools, political tools that we will use as we continue to build relationships with our elected officials in the community and with the community itself. Obviously, we would all prefer to have statewide legislation that would address these issues. I think in the meantime, we are doing what we can in our own communities in regard to education and hopefully moving our city officials forward.
Ryan,
Would you
would
say
you
that
please
maybe
stop sharing your
part of the
screen?
issue is that there's a, sorry, John, that the proclamations or, other similar types of non-binding, resolutions and so forth can be thought of as a signal that there are a lot of people thinking about this and agreeing and wanting to move in one direction. And that creates a certain amount of pressure on the political powers that be, who may not be ready and may not be aware that people in their town or their community are thinking along the same lines.
Thank you, Ryan, for saying that, because one of the reasons that we started the plastics group in the 10 towns effort was because we have struggled in the legislature for years now to get legislation passed that would help with the plastic problem. And it came to our attention that if we could get a lot of towns with evidence that they care about plastic, in fact, they are doing everything they can, and that can be communicated to the state reps and senators, then that can be a powerful tool to influence and swing legislation, which is the ultimate goal. Thank you.
Yeah. John, sorry, I interrupted you earlier.
I was just asking if you could stop sharing your screen for the Q&A. If we can see people, that would be good.
Okay.
And maybe we have time for one more question, then we can go on to warrant articles.
Someone was asking if they're going to get copies of the slides. I know you will all get a copy of the recordings. Will we have slides to give out?
Yes, we will share the.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we'll share them on the website. And this recording will be on YouTube, available through the website. And in the description there, we can link to the slides also.
Okay, and then there's a question about restaurants. Anyone want to address that? Can you bring your own cutlery into restaurants? How are they handling the plastic issue? Christine, you want to take that?
I don't know about bringing your own cutlery in. I think it would probably depend on the restaurant. You can bring your own containers to take food home. We are right now with our restaurant initiative working on putting together information about reusables and alternatives to plastic for restaurants. We also are doing some research on information about existing RSAs that might impact customers' ability to bring their own containers into restaurants. Right now, it is basically impossible for the most part to take your own container and have them in their kitchen, fill your container to take home to have your takeout meal. So keep an eye on 10 Towns, on the Plastic Working Group, because there's going to be a lot more information coming out about restaurants and hopefully plastic reduction efforts by them in the state.
Great, thank you, Christine and colleagues. And now let's move on to another type of community action. John Gage is going to talk about. Go on, John, and you're going to share your slides. Excellent.
That's right. Thank you so much, Remer. Great stuff from the plastics group. Yes, I'm John Gage. I'm a volunteer in my town of Windham's local energy committee, and I'm also a volunteer of Citizens Climate Lobby, acting as the state coordinator. I'm going to talk tonight about bringing a warrant article to your town meeting. This is a pretty easy thing that anybody can do who's worried about a big issue, to have an effect that goes beyond your town. And so I'll talk a little bit about the types of warrant articles, the options, and then what it takes to do a citizen's petition warrant article to get your text on your town meeting warrant or on the ballot for voters to choose yes or no on in the town election, probably in March. And then I'll focus on one particular warrant article project called Carbon Cashback that has now passed. It's been done in 45 towns in New Hampshire, and 75% of the towns voted yes, but all of them were a big success, teaching and informing people about climate solutions. So let's get started. So there are two general processes to do a warrant article. One is a citizen's petition warrant article. This is involving collecting signatures and then submitting the petition to the town hall so that it will appear on the town warrant. And the other is a select board sponsored warrant article, which is working with your board of select people to get text onto the warrant that will then be voted on. Melissa will be speaking after me on that process, and I'm going to focus on the citizens petition warrant article process. Okay, so what's involved? It's actually pretty easy. Every town is different, but there are guidelines set by the state. So the first step is really just call your town clerk or administrator and learn the basic rules, such as how many signatures do you need to collect, and what is the deadline for submitting the petition to the town hall? And what's the process? Because there's some towns want their town lawyer or other group to review the text before you even collect signatures on it, because they have to approve the text that will go on the warrant. So to do this, copy an example from somewhere else is the easiest way to start. As we heard from plastics, this is there's a lot of petitions and warrant article text out there. Modify it to meet your town's needs, print it, and then recruit help. So we heard about the power of engaging community leaders and helping with the effort to inform, and then at the time of elections, speak in favor of the particular warrant article. And your help can also help you collect signatures. Most towns only require about 25 signatures. And there's different ways of doing it. You can send a PDF of the petition to your friends and print some out and give it to people to have them collect a couple of signatures from their friends and collect them all together. Finding a good, simple question to ask for a signature from a stranger really helps. For the climate petition, we tend to ask, "Hi, would you like to sign something to help with climate change?" Because this is an easy thing to say no to for somebody who's not concerned. And it invites questions for somebody that's worried about climate change or wonders what they would be signing. Then you have to submit this before the deadline, usually between the middle of January and the middle of February. And then you have time between then and town meeting to inform voters. We have, you can do letters to the editor or hold an event with your conservation committee or energy committee in town, or just an event at the library. and then speak on its behalf. Sometimes you have to do this at a town meeting where they decide whether to accept the signatures and put the article on the warrant. And then when it's time to vote, some towns have a deliberative session where you can talk about it before the actual vote on ballots, or many towns just vote in a room and they read out the warrant article one by one, talk about each one, and then vote on it. So this is where recruiting some help to have a few people say a few good words about your article can really make a difference in the outcome. Okay, so I think I'll stop sharing my screen, and I know that there's people here that have put warrant articles on their town's warrants, and there may be questions about the general process. So I'll just pause for a couple minutes. Does anybody have any questions about doing the citizens petition warrant article?
I have a question, John. Am I right in assuming that this is something that's really typical of New England, and that you wouldn't see this kind of process necessarily in other regions of the country? It's
That
kind of
is
connected
very-
to the whole concept of the town meeting, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very true. This idea hatched in New Hampshire with a few state representatives, the Plymouth Climate Crisis Coalition, and it seemed natural to the group that created this idea. And then Citizens Climate Lobby liked the idea, the national organization, and we did a panel discussion about it in a national conference, and a whole bunch of states were interested. And then when they looked into actually if they could do it, it was really difficult for most states. Maine did end up doing it, but as residents of New Hampshire, we really have an interesting option to express our voices in a big way using this process. Because the text that you put on your warrant article gets read by every voter, or read to every voter. So we use it to plant an idea about a climate solution and get people thinking about it and talking about it.
So
I
it's
see
really
Phil-
you're contributing then to a real aspect of democracy, as well as potentially contributing to fighting climate change.
Exactly. I'm an introverted software engineer personally. It's activities like this that have, stretched my abilities and skills beyond what I ever thought that I was going to be doing. Because if you feel strongly enough about something, and climate change is a monumental problem, and I'm really worried about it. For a long time, I didn't know what to do. And then through Citizens Climate Lobby, started finding a voice. But it's working with neighbors and friends in New Hampshire on projects like this that really make me feel like I can make a difference. Because we can collect 25 signatures and have a whole town learn about this solution through that effort. And what's 75% of the towns have passed the resolution on climate, and that causes the town to send a mail to our state representatives, the governor, the members of Congress, and the president about this solution, asking for action. So, we're creating political will to enable our legislators to act. It's very empowering at a personal level, and it's a very powerful thing to do to move things that are much bigger than us as individuals.
Great.
Thank you.
And
Susan, I
Reimar,
interrupted you, and then Phil Bush.
Oh, that's all I was going to say, is that Phil's got his hand up.
No.
Oh, and then one
Hi,
other question
thanks,
about cities.
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to talk about cities because I live in Lebanon, and depends on Lebanon and some other cities in New Hampshire have made it very difficult actually to do citizen initiative petitions. In Lebanon, you need 10% of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election to sign. So in Lebanon, that means we'd have to get 600 to 800 signatures. It's been done once by a very concerted effort on a fight against a gas pipeline. but it's very, very difficult, takes a lot of work. And I talked to some city councilors about it, saying, why is this made so hard? And they basically said, we do it on purpose because we don't want citizen initiatives. We want ballot initiatives. We want residents to come to the city council and work with us to make changes. And that can make some sense. But on the other hand, it really does reduce the chance for the kind of participatory democracy that you can do in the towns. It's too bad, but we find other ways to work with the city.
Yeah, I didn't mention it, but the climate one is a resolution to take action, and we have done that in 3 cities. But as you say, the hurdles to get it on the ballot are very difficult. And so our response to that is, well, let's get the town council or city council and mayor to issue this resolution and send our legislators the message. And we've done that in Portsmouth, Keene, and Dover. And although you're not sharing the solution with the whole city, which would be really worthwhile doing, Congress is really watching this climate resolution with interest. As a volunteer of CCL, we lobby Congress directly also, and we go in there with a list of towns that have passed it, and they said, oh yes, we know, we're getting these mails. So they're seeing citizens are in favor of it from the citizens petition warrant article, and they're seeing leaders are in favor of it when they see city councils and mayors endorsing it, asking for it. Both of these things are critical. We all, and we need business support also, but all of these things are worth doing. So just working with the city council, actually Susan did it in Dover, and it's a wonderful way to send a message to Congress that you want action, and the State House. So thank you. Anything else?
Great. Susan, did you have a question from the chat? No?
No, I think people are resolving it, so it's great.
Great. Okay. Well, let's go to carbon cashback. So this was a project, as I said, set up by a couple local people in New Hampshire that were really concerned about climate. There was a carbon cashback bill in the New Hampshire State House at the time, and we kind of wanted to figure out how, working at our town level, we could help support passage of this state legislation. But of course, carbon pricing needs to be done globally. So in addition to asking for carbon cashback at the state level, the resolution also asks for it at the federal level. And the title of the resolution is a New Hampshire resolution to take action on climate pollution. So we're talking about a somewhat politically divisive concept. Saying global warming can be a trigger to some people, even climate change, but nobody likes pollution. And so we tried to provide materials that are less of a conflict right off the bat. So economists are in near universal agreement about the #1 policy that's required to achieve ambitious climate goals, and that's to put a price on climate pollution. So the IPCC in its special report on 1.5 degrees of warming said explicit carbon prices remain a necessary condition of ambitious climate policies. And by ambitious climate policies, they mean achieving 1.5 or even 2 degrees of a warming limit. In the 6th assessment report, which came out this year, they noted carbon pricing is most effective if revenues are returned to taxpayers corresponding to widely accepted notions of fairness. So this is what you do with the money that's being collected. giving it back to people makes carbon pricing most effective. And our own Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, says, we cannot solve the climate crisis without effective carbon pricing. So it's this expert opinion about this one particular policy that inspires me to push against the headwinds that are mainly funded by fossil fuel industry players. Also, some people that just don't want the government to do anything, it seems, to step up and do something. Oh, come on. Okay, so why a town warrant? To get a global price on carbon. Because Congress doesn't create political will, they respond to it. And as we've been hearing, the way to get political will created is to get people talking about a problem and solutions and getting towns involved and sending messages to state and federal leaders. And in 2007, 164 New Hampshire towns passed a resolution asking for federal legislation to reduce climate pollution. They also, that same resolution asked to set up local energy committees, and a lot of towns did that in response to this. The state made an effort to help make that happen. But as far as addressing climate pollution was concerned, no specific approach was specified, and obviously Congress has waffled. This year they did pass some good legislation, but there's still an enormous gap between our emissions, even after the Inflation Reduction Act is fully implemented, and where we need to be. So this resolution gives voters a choice. Everybody gets to read about it and decide yes or no. We're not forcing anything on anybody. And as I said, 34 towns and 3 cities have passed this resolution, and 10 more are working on it right now. And the media has noticed this project. We've appeared twice on the front page of the Concord Monitor. We were on Laura Kanoi's exchange on NHPR about 2 years ago. And Congress is watching because they would like to solve climate change. They're waiting for enough political will to be able to do what's really necessary. So what's the resolution look like? It's a little longer than this, but this is basically it. It's called a resolution to take action on climate pollution. And the text says, we, the voters of whatever town you did this in, ask our state and federal legislators to pass carbon cashback legislation for our health, well-being, and the protection of our natural resources. You can find the actual template, which has the full text, on carboncashback.org. Okay, so let me just spend a half a minute talking about the nuts and bolts of the policy. It's got 3 parts. The first is charge a steadily increasing fee on the production of fossil fuels at the source. So we charge the first year $15 per ton of CO2 emitted from the coal, oil, and gas that comes out of the ground, where it comes into the economy. The money gets put into a carbon trust in the US Treasury, which then divides it up into equal shares each month and rebates the money back to households. So it's 1 share per adult and half a share per child, typically, of all the money minus whatever it costs to administer the process back to households. Then at the federal level, we can protect US businesses against competition from free polluting countries by charging a border carbon adjustment tariff on imports of free polluting countries. So everything sold in the US market reflects its appropriate carbon price. And this makes US manufacturers more competitive because right now they are less carbon intensive than developing countries manufacturing, but because the price of pollution is free for everybody in the US market, our manufacturers don't have the competitive advantage that carbon pricing gives them. At the state level, we would use lower prices. It rises every year, but we could just rise $2 or $3 a year at the state level. but it would send a message to towns and businesses and citizens that, hey, carbon pricing is coming. Start thinking about what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint, because it's going to get expensive eventually to pollute. And it would show Congress that it's possible. And federal legislation, as I said, would allow border carbon adjustments to protect jobs, make US businesses more competitive, and hold other countries accountable for their pollution. So this solution is based on sound economic principles. It's market-based, revenue neutral way to address a serious global pollution problem, and it strongly encourages other countries to match our carbon price. So this is actually a warrant article that does solve a global problem, or takes a step to solve a global problem. Why does it work? Well, when pollution is free, we simply get too much of it. Free pollution is like a hidden tax we all pay because we do suffer the consequences and costs from the pollution. Right now, the fossil fuel industry enjoys an enormous subsidy. We're picking up the pieces and paying for the damages from its pollution. It's cost-effective, comprehensive, and fair. It's not a tax. We're simply charging a fee on the pollution producers, and it's not income redistribution because there's no means testing. Everyone in the US or in the state would get one equal share. In fact, doing that puts most people ahead financially. You can go to this calculator to see, based on your income, your energy use from travel and home heating, and the expected dividend, whether you'll come out ahead or behind. But 2/3 of all families will come out ahead, and that's progressively skewed because the smaller your carbon footprint is, the less you spend in the trickle down higher prices from the fee, but everybody gets the same back. So low income households break even or come out ahead 20%, the bottom 20% of households by consumption, 99% of them break even or come out ahead. And it's very good for middle income households, and a quarter of the high income households come out ahead. It's all based on their carbon footprint. But the power is in putting a price on carbon. This sends a price signal through the whole economy, getting investors and producers and consumers to work on reducing their carbon emissions. It'll reduce emissions by 50%, meeting the US target. This one policy would get us there, and on the path to 2050. Complementary policies are needed to get us all the way to net zero by 2050, but this is our best first step. Improves health because in the first 10 years, pollution from electricity generation, mercury and SOx emissions will be reduced by 95%, simply by ending the use of coal and discouraging diesel. It mitigates risks and the increasing costs of our continued global inaction. Of course, if we put a price on pollution from fossil fuels, that will raise the price of fossil fuel energy. A study was done that showed only 2% of inflation over a total of 20 years will be caused by this. And people that are worried about high energy prices could use a little extra cash that the dividend will provide. So this is actually a help to people's pain in high energy prices today. So why address climate pollution with carbon cash back? It's effective, efficient, and economists say it's required. We have to put a price on carbon to properly address the problem. It's good for families, it's good for business, it has a global reach, and strong co-benefits, less pollution, better health, and the extra money in family incomes lets them spend more on the things they need, and that actually creates local jobs. Here's a list of the 35 towns and 34 towns in 3 cities that have passed the carbon cashback resolution. You can go to carboncashback.org, scroll down near the bottom of the page, and there's links in the results section to see the actual warrant article and information about what happened in the town meeting in many of these towns. And we'd like to do a lot more. There's many, many more towns in New Hampshire. So go check carboncashback.org and see if your town's in the list. And if it's not, hit the join us, go to the join us page and give us some help. You'll get an email with a breakdown of steps to get started. The website has additional resources, including benefits analyses, the warrant article template that you can take a copy of and put your town's name in print, and additional resources such as handouts, talking points, templates for a letter to the editor, and offers to help you with a town event to do an informational talk and answer questions. And I believe that's it.
Great, thank you, John. And I would suggest let us move on to Melissa Elander, who will talk about some other types of warrant articles, and then let's do questions after Melissa's through.
Okay, this is
Okay, can you see my screen? Oh, not yet, sorry.
Blank so far.
Okay. Is that good?
Nope.
Nope. Oh.
Not seeing anything yet.
Oh. Maybe you should do questions. I seem to be experiencing technical difficulties.
yeah, why don't we take a question?
Sorry.
All right. Questions about warrant articles. Citizen inspired.
My daughter decided to collect a couple towns this summer. She just went to the main street of Goffstown and a couple others and asked people the question and identified town champions. So we have 10 or 12 towns now. It'd be great to have more.
Great. And Melissa, we are seeing your screen now.
Great. So I can start. So my name is Melissa Elander. I work for Clean Energy New Hampshire as the North Country Energy Circuit Rider. The Circuit Rider program was created and started in the North Country in Coos County. This is sort of blocking the map a little bit, but and it started, it's funded by a grant from the Tillotson Fund, which is a private philanthropic organization that funds sustainable economic growth and development in Coos County and Northern Grafton County. And I specifically work with municipalities and school districts in Coos County and Northern Grafton County to do energy related projects. And sort of under that umbrella, I work with towns and schools to do energy use benchmarking in their municipal facilities, to identify projects and prioritize projects, and to apply for funding and then implement projects. Oops. So a little more on that. I just help basically with identifying projects, whether they're energy efficiency or renewable energy projects, and help with all of the challenges that can come up in implementing those projects from start to finish. And so every project unfolds a little bit differently. Again, this is a bit repetitive, but I identify projects with the town. This is done cooperatively. I do not go into a town and decide what a town or a school is going to work on. That is definitely done in cooperation with the folks that I'm working with. But I apply for grants, help with marketing to voters ahead of annual meetings, write requests for proposals, and also assist with warrant articles, which is what I'm going to talk about. What I thought I would do is provide some examples of warrant articles that I've worked on in towns, and then discuss how the towns have gone about passing those warrant articles. So this is the first town that I'll talk about, which is Whitefield, which is in southern Coos County. And this warrant article was to fund 3 small solar arrays on municipal buildings, the fire station, the town hall, and the library, and also to fund the replacement of the fire station roof at the fire station. I developed this warrant article. We had just submitted, I'd worked with the Director of Public Works to submit a USDA grant. One second, Erin. To submit a USDA grant for to supplement funding for the solar projects. And we immediately had to turn our attention to writing a warrant article. So I worked on that warrant article with the administrative assistant for the town. And I think what's interesting about this warrant article is that it estimates the amount of grant funding that is expected to be received, which is $126,000. And it states that if that grant funding is not received, the project will not move forward. So I think that was a pretty important part of this warrant article that contributed to its success, but we did have to receive that amount in grant funding. As soon as we had written that warrant article, which was about a year ago, we had to immediately turn our attention to sort of educating the voters ahead of annual meeting in March, because I had, again, only been working with the Director of Public Works on behalf of the Select Board and then the administrative assistant. So I quickly sort of talked to anybody that I knew or sort of anybody that was recommended that I speak to in Whitefield, and pulled together sort of an informal group of Whitefield residents and held a public information meeting. And we developed a plan to get the word out to voters. First of all, what we did is I learned about all of the resources in Whitefield to reach residents. That was a social media forum. Some people in that group were willing to write letters to the editor. I put together sort of a one-page informational document and frequently asked question. It was a two-sided document that was distributed widely. And then we were able to get a newspaper article as well, some of the things that have already been mentioned as techniques. And that warrant article did pass. Unfortunately, Whitefield still does not have an energy committee, but I'm hoping that that will form soon. In Bethlehem, this is another warrant article that passed as well. This is the most detailed warrant article that I've seen. Bethlehem has a very active energy commission. And so this was actually written mostly by the Energy Commission with some help from one select board member. And this was also for a large solar array with a total cost of $472,000. And at the time of writing this warrant article, the town had already received $165,000 in USDA grant funds. So you can see how they spell out the different sources of funding for the project. And one really interesting thing about this warrant article is only requesting $150,000 from the town's general fund. And the Energy Commission was actually expecting to have to go back to town meeting in 2022 with another warrant article to ask voters for permission to get a loan for the remaining $157,000. They made the decision not to ask voters for all of that money at once. This was during the coronavirus pandemic, and it was sort of they didn't want to overextend their reach and ask for all of the funding at once and have it fail. So they decided to do it this way. And one of the things that they did, this is the Energy Commission in front of one of their solar arrays that was installed. One of the things that they did, and I put a link in here, which you will be able to click on in the slides, is the Energy Commission made a 4-minute video, zero budget, shot with an iPhone, and a piece of paper, a large piece of paper with a script handwritten on it. And it was, narrated by an Energy Commission member who's a local teacher and sort of very well known, just talking about the project and the warrant article and the benefits to the town. And then the Energy Commission used all of the networks within the town to sort of spread that video around. And it was very, very well received. A lot of people mentioned having watched that video and it made the project understandable. There was also an info sheet and an FAQ and also letters to the editor as well. But I would recommend watching that video because I do think that videos can be really, really helpful. In Shelburne, I wanted to mention Shelburne because it's an energy committee of 2 people. So you don't need a huge energy committee to do a solar project in town. And what they did is they wrote this warrant article for not more than $60,000 to put a small solar array on their town hall. And one thing that the Energy Commission did is, as they were researching this project, they communicated very, very frequently with the select board. And I will say the select board was not in favor of this solar project to begin with. But they did give the Energy Commission sort of permission to do research on their behalf. And so the Energy Commission very, very frequently came back and reported their findings to the select board. And they also did a very thorough financial analysis of the project as well to show the financial benefits to the town. And at the end of this process, during the public informational meetings that were set up, the select board were really the ones that were standing up, and they were able to talk about the project in detail because of how well they had been kept up to date. And they were the advocates for the project. And that was really exciting to see. And it really credit goes to the Energy Commission in Shelburne for getting this project through. Again, they did, educational meetings. This was pre-COVID, and they made use of their transfer station. And the fact that everybody, so over a month, they put up a table at their transfer station and they handed out info sheets and that FAQ document, and they talked to everybody, which is, Shelburne's a small town, so I think they were probably able to reach everybody in about a month. Just a second. So one final warrant article that has been very successful in a few towns is this idea of an energy or a solar capital reserve fund for future projects. If a group or a citizen, this could even be maybe a petition warrant article, if you would like to do a solar project in the future or an energy efficiency project, but you maybe don't have a committee or you don't sort of have all of your ducks in a row at this point, you could potentially start a capital reserve fund. And this is a warrant article to create and fund a capital reserve fund to do a project in the future. And I will say that having these funds set aside for a solar project makes all the difference. If a town is sort of maybe financing a smaller project, taking a loan out, having this money as a down payment really can just make the project save money in year 1, which is huge. So that's what I have. There's my contact info. Oops, I forgot to finish this sentence here. Sorry. I can send out example warrant articles, an example of that information sheet, an FAQ, if it's something you want to replicate within your own community. If you are in the North Country or the Monadnock region, myself or my counterpart can work very closely with you to develop warrant articles.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. And as we said before, we will be sending out or making available the slides so people can get hold of them and click on the live links for further information. Thank you all to all of the speakers, guests, and New Hampshire Network members. And I think now we'll go to Susan Richmond, who will talk a little bit about upcoming events. And if there are any questions, this would be a superb time to communicate them. Susan, go ahead. You've got your hand raised.
Yes. So I just want to know, Melissa, can you reiterate who do you service? And for all of us who cannot benefit from your services, is there anyone else that can help people think through all the steps of how to create a plan and where there are sources of money?
Yes. So I work in Coos County and Northern Grafton County. We have another circuit rider in the Monadnock region. We are hoping to expand the circuit rider program statewide. So we have somebody everywhere. But at the moment, we only have the 2 circuit riders. So I would say reach out to Clean Energy New Hampshire. We can, probably point you in some directions, as opposed to maybe work as hands-on as the circuit riders do. But we can be there as a resource for folks as well, for sure. And we do have toolkits for new energy committees on our website. We can send out examples and provide some guidance.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you.
Such a great resource. If anyone's interested in taking on one of these sets of tasks, there is help available, which is awesome. Other questions? Comments? Well, Susan, do you want to talk a little bit? We're coming up to
Yep.
after it's more than 6:45. So let's see. I should share my screen, right? Is that correct?
Yes, please. Yes, please. And that was what Melissa was just saying is the perfect segue into what I have to say, that we're looking for ways to help our communities, to help the planet, to provide examples for what can be done in New Hampshire. And that is where the new Inflation Reduction Act may help out, the IRA. And I have to tell you, I attended a workshop on the IRA, and halfway through, one of the speakers said, "Oh, I don't know, I don't understand it." So that's sort of a quick picture of how it makes the tax code almost seem simple. So if you don't understand it, one piece that you can have some relief from is that it has not entirely been worked out and more information is coming. Whoops, that's not me.
All right. Apologies. Oh, that's not it either. Got it right here. It's just not coming up on the screen.
Okay. So where to go for information? So you now know Melissa, you now know Clean Energy New Hampshire. Our congressional offices can help. I didn't bother the Hassan office because I knew they were struggling with elections, but I did dare to bug the Pappas and the Custer and the Shaheen offices, and all of them are saying that they are willing. You know what? I want to go up one more, or nope, down.
Nope.
Sorry. Down one more. Okay, there we go. So if you have time, oops. Okay, well, while we're on this is Union of Concerned Scientists have wonderful blogs. And this particular blog places New Hampshire vis-a-vis New England. So it is called "For Global Climate Success, New England Must Seize Climate and Clean Energy Opportunities." But Roger Stevenson and Union of Concerned Scientists have really informative articles on climate issues all the time. And you can find that article at newhampshirenetwork.org, Take Action. Can I have you go backwards one, Reinmar? Okay, so this Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m., if you have daytime, the Department of Energy's new committee for communicating with communities about IRA is having an informational webinar. And I'm going to email this to everyone who's on this event today. So that will explain the IRA, at least insofar as home energy goes, but they're also going to talk about listening sessions. And those are a chance for us to say, we want to make sure this is possible and that's possible. So I will let you know as soon as I learn about when the listening sessions are happening. But an easy email to remember is energy.gov/newsroom. And that's how you can keep up to date on the information that's coming out on the IRA. The Pappas and the Custer office and the Shaheen office have sent me materials. I will send those to you as well. Most of them right now are concerning what advantages there are for you, the homeowner, how you can further electrify your house, get an electric vehicle, how much money is available for it. Lots of little, you know, if you qualify, you can get a little more, but if you don't meet this qualification or that, then maybe you'll get a little less. So it can be a little complicated. Shaheen's office is going to be having a webinar explaining all this soon, and I will let you know about that as well. So I think that's as much as you can know right now. If you want to know, again, for just you, your home, what you can do for your house, Clean Energy New Hampshire does still exist. And the way to find out about what they can offer you is through your own utility company. So I'm Eversource. I need to contact Eversource. But if you're Unitil or Liberty, you need to contact them. Okay, that's that. And then go up one more, Reinmar, for some action I need to ask you to do. Oops. So I'm sorry. New Hampshire is promised nearly $70 million for the IRA. So we're only a little bit behind Maine, and we're quite a bit ahead of Vermont in terms of how much money the US government is promising us for the IRA, but we don't get it if we don't apply. And we also need to have a clear energy plan for that to happen as well. So a while ago, we had Don Kreese and Sam Evans-Brown on, and some of our legislators, and they all say, please. Oh.
Sorry, it's not quite doing what I expect.
You all know how to find Chris Sununu, and you can go to the Department of Energy and talk to the commissioner or the deputy commissioner. Commissioner's name is Chris Elms. Deputy commissioner is Jared Chicoine. You want to tell all of them that we want New Hampshire aggressively to pursue. Okay, I think it's up one more. Yeah, there we go. So the Inflation Reduction Acts will only come to us if our government plans for it and requests it. And we let money like that go by. And we don't want it to happen with $70 million possible. So when you have the emails and the slides, you'll have these addresses, but you want to request of the governor and our commissioner and deputy energy commissioner, request New Hampshire aggressively pursue all available funding programs contained within the IRA and maximize the use of the funds to reduce energy costs, improve efficiency, and transition to clean energy solutions. So that is what we ask you to do to make sure that this good money comes to us so that individual homes and then businesses, and we can have bigger projects and energy, EV charging stations, and our communities can do more. It's a real opportunity, but we need our government to act on it. Okay, and then I have some previews of coming attractions. So the penultimate slide, one more. Here we go. January, 2 events, and they're both going to be awesome. Joe Kwasnick, who used to be on the board at the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, has invited his friend Brian Calnan from there to talk about transactive energy, which means that now that we have so many different places energy is coming from, solar and wind and our EV batteries, how is the grid going to handle that, given that parts of the grid are over 100 years old? So the electric co-op is working on that, and that should be a model for the state. So watch it and then lean on your reps to follow through and get them to watch it too. And then January 24th, truly amazing, community power is going to actually happen starting in April in, I think it's 25 communities. So January 24th is going to be an event celebrating that and learning all about it, and how, if your town doesn't have community power yet, it can get it. So we didn't talk about that today, but that's certainly another way to have local impact on global. And then we invite you to join NewHampshireNetwork.org. We have a legislative group meeting tomorrow, climate group on Wednesday, and then next communications group on the 13th, and then plastics will meet again in 2023. And I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks to everybody for attending our presentation. Any further questions, let us know, and watch for emails from us to video, etc. And keep an eye out, and everybody be well and happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you for attending.